we have returned everyone here to continue our night of double feature. And we are going to be reviewing the larger brother, the Tengu Flipper.
The larger brother.
Why not? I don't know.
Yeah,
Sometimes he's not the older brother. Sometimes he's just the larger brother.
Or
Coming from the larger brother.
not touching that. All right.
I won't let you.
All right.
Aw, that's not the reaction that you should have had with
Not
that.
so much as but you know, that's okay. Let's get it.
All right. Should
Should
we
we
reverse order it from the last time just to make it fair? Oh, son of a bitch.
Again? You had the whole break to figure this out. God damn it.
Screw you, Joe. Screw you up the ear.
I think it's only fair that Joe gets to talk shit.
Eric is running back to figure it out. I don't know what's going on here.
Oh.
We had it figured out. I don't know. And I'm reset into fisheye view again.
Way to go.
I don't know why it's not. It's just not charging? Or it's not connected to the...
So yeah, are we going to do it in reverse order then?
I suppose so.
Sure.
Let's start with Paul.
Or me, because I went last?
Oh, it's working again.
Yeah.
From
first.
last episode. I thought you meant like the way we're appearing on screen kind of thing.
Do it.
like working our way up to Dennis kind of thing. No, yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely like the... personally, I like the tool a lot better than I like the flipper, but objectively, the flipper makes more sense. For the materials and the fit and finish, I gave it both an 8.
What did you rate it overall?
What was that?
What did you rate it overall?
I gave it a 73 at a C+.
Oh, hold on one second.
Got the wrong file up.
Yeah, more silliness. That's okay, though.
Way to go. Cutting ability, I also gave it an 8 because it actually has a nice, decent blade length, so you'll get to be able to do some decent sized cuts with it and whatnot. Ergonomic execution got a 7 because I find it's just in a very awkward size in general. And think it could have been slightly smaller or slightly bigger would have done good. And the lockup and actuation, I also gave it a 7 just for discrepancies with the detent and how stiff it can be sometimes. It's not bad. It has a nice poppy action, but yeah, it is what it is. For the personal side of things, that's where this guy bombed for me. I was just going to check if we can hear Dennis.
I think I should be back. I had audio the whole time. I just wasn't trying to talk while Erica was doing stuff in the background. But
sounds good.
Yeah, I am back in business. So
awesome. I shall carry on. Yeah, material choice, same as with the tool. I gave it an 8 because the same reasons as before, 20 CV and the multicolored G10. Aesthetics, I gave the flipper a 6. I just find it kind of awkward. Something about the sizing of it, the slight bow it has going, just doesn't do it for me for some reason. Pocket ergonomics, I gave it a 7. It's not bad in the slip, but for that size of a blade, I would have preferred it having a pocket clip on it, but then that would have changed the design up on it and stuff like that.
And was asking in chat about the pocket clip, yeah.
Yeah. And for the enthusiasm, I gave it a 6 because, yeah, I don't know. I just don't really care for the flipper, but it's not bad. There's parts of it that I like, such as the inlay detail of the shield and stuff. But, yeah, overall, I like the tool a lot better.
That's fair.
Next answers.
that's me, I guess, eh?
Yeah.
Well, it's a good thing I got the camera half-ass figured out just in time for that. All right. The flipper. I scored it slightly higher than the tool. I gave it a 72, which is a C plus. The big standout on the objective, we'll just skip because it's 8. Honestly, I think they did just like a decent job on it, everything. The cutting ability as well. It's relatively like it's not that thick behind the edge compared to the tool. The tool for the blade stock is a lot wedgier, I believe, right? Ergonomic execution. I went back to that neutral handle thing about how just like whatever you get, just a straight handle. It is a little small for me, yes, but I have to reflect on how I've scored mini Griptilians or mini Super Freaks or things like that in a similar finger size category, right? So lockup and actuation is the big wowzer. I gave this thing a 10. That doesn't come out very often on a flipper, if ever. I think this is the first for me, for sure. I actually, when was having the video problems while Nigel was talking about the lockup actuation, and I didn't hear why you gave it a 7. I'm super curious about why.
Partially because it's a liner lock. If I haven't even given an access lock a 10, I think I've only given access locks a 9.
Okay, fair enough.
And then also discrepancy of the detent. I've found it to be sticky sometimes. It does, once it pops, it gives it a nice pop, but sometimes it can be fairly stiff.
I haven't found that. And maybe that's the machining on the flipper just being as nice as it is that it doesn't dig in. I found with some things, and even like my 0804, it's not a hard knife to flip open, but there is some aggressive jimping sometimes that if you did have a strong detent or if you did pin the frame lock, something like that jimping might eat you up a little bit. CRKT Ripple was the craziest knife I've ever had for jimping. It was unbelievable, right? So yes, maybe the detent does have a little bit of a variation, but I think just because of how nice they've machined the flipper, super nice to flip, and there's no half flips with this thing. The detent dialed in from when it spins to fully open. I sometimes try to make a knife not flip open just to be a dick about it and see how half-assed I can be about it. And I've never had a detent that was that positive, but that pleasant to still open at the same time. And that's, for a not flipper guy, that's why I gave it a 10, right? So on the personal side of things, materials like Nigel dabbled on, same as the tool, 20 CV and G10, plus the layering. We haven't talked into the layering, but I took a picture of that specifically because that's one of the big standouts for me with this particular tool.
The cookies and cream.
Compared to a Griptilian, which has maybe some blue, or a Super Freak that has some red or whatever, the way that they did this is kind of, it's really nice, right? So pocket ergos, I gave this lower than the folder. No clip for number 1, and then on top of that, the no lanyard hole aspect with this thing as well. Super stiff in the sheath and hard to get out. So even when I do pull the sheath itself,
There it is.
Yeah. It's stiff, man. It gets stiff. It's all sticky up in there. So, I'm just saying. Enthusiasm, I'm going to stay with the same as the tool. It's a good, solid meh. It's not hatery. The fit and finish on this thing is pretty nice, and with the shield being inlaid whatever way they want to come about it, and smooth, like just like a custom, I would say it's close to the fit and finish on his customs, about just being like seamless on those, right? So you got to give credit where credit's due. Unfortunately, Benchmade, that's the one aspect they did look at, and one day maybe they'll look at proper grinds and maybe that'll fix an 8 on my scoring, right? But yeah, so all right, that's me.
I guess I'm next. I gave this a much better score than I gave the tool. I gave this a 77, which is still, it's a B-. And I gave it 8s for all 3: cost versus materials, cost versus fit and finish, and for cutting ability. Because you are getting a larger package in this situation. And the fact that it's only $50 Canadian more than the tool, it scored better for me on that end. Fit and finish, I gave it an 8 like I did to the tool because it's just dialed in. Cutting ability, I gave it an 8 again because it's a Benchmade knife, and I don't think I've ever gotten a Benchmade knife that didn't cut out of the box. There's definitely ones that will cut better than others, but they always will cut. Usually. Right? Maybe?
I haven't seen a terribly ground knife, but I've seen some subpar ground knives.
Yes. Yeah. Ergonomics, I gave it a 7 because for me, I can get all 4 fingers on it. But because of the placement of the flipper, it does push your hand back on the knife in a way that would be better if it wasn't done that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
If the flipper was forward a quarter inch, there would be a lot more real estate for pinkies for people. And then lockup and actuation, I gave it a 9 because, like Dennis said, the action on this thing is phenomenal. It's, as far as opening, it's nicer than my all titanium 450. My 450 is drop shutty, which this thing's not because of the liner lock. It kind of slows it down a bit. But just it fires like a rocket ship open. On the personal side of things, I gave it an 8 for materials, again, because 20 CV I'm always down for. And the G10, and specifically on this model with the backspacer that's the layered black and white thin layers, I've kind of coined it the cookies and cream. You
did throw that picture up that I got of that, Joe? I don't know if you did when I was talking about it, but I got a really nice picture of it.
I didn't see the one where it's top down on the show scale side.
No,
the cookies and cream backspacer.
Okay, because this is the one I got. Let me double check my email, see if I can bring that in, but I didn't see that turn up.
There was the batch of 3 where you were doing the overhead view of one. That one there. It's in the same batch of that one.
Okay.
It's the next picture should be.
You can just see the lines in this one a little bit.
I did a sideways action one.
There it is. Yes. Yeah, I'll bring that up right now.
You know that picture that I sent to you?
It's in the email. It didn't get saved to my folder, but you know what? That's okay. I just learned not to trust Windows 10.
Way to go. Way to go, Joe.
No. Way to go, Windows 10.
Way to go, Joe.
Way to go, Windows 10.
I've learned not to trust Joe, is what I've heard
exactly.
here. There it is.
Whatever.
That's prettiness.
There's your precious cookies and cream.
Ooh, baby.
Yeah, look at that. It's delicious.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us how you really feel there, Joe.
No, that's actually a really sweet looking knife, actually.
So that moves me right into aesthetic, which I gave a 7. And part of the reason why I gave it a 7 was because I really like the way that cookies and cream looks and the black and white layering like on the tool with the shield and everything else. The reason it only got a 7 and not higher was because the tanto is weird. It's a weird shaped tanto on this knife.
Sure is.
It needs to match the weird shaped tool,
No, I get it, but it doesn't even match the tool. It's different. It's got a different front. Like the tip is grounded in a different way.
Yeah.
Which is nuts.
It's everyone's got a unique tip.
Indeed.
Hey, shut up.
Who do you?
For pocket ergos, I gave it a 7 again because I agree with Nigel. Not having a pocket clip on a knife this big is kind of a nuisance. But as far as a knife that large in the slip, it did sit quite comfortably and stayed. Like I put it in my pocket and walked around with it. And it didn't try and shift. It didn't try and fall in front of the things that were in my pocket. And it's probably partially due to the fact that it's such stiff leather. Is it staying in place? It's not folding in your pocket and flopping around.
But it's a whore to get out.
Yeah.
It's really tricky to get that knife. I don't know, are you guys pinching the bottom of it to kind of toothpaste squeeze it to get it out? Or can you actually get your finger? Because I can't get my fingers in, so Nigel must have a tricky time.
Yeah, I squeeze it some, yeah.
I think I squeeze it a little bit to get my thumb underneath the flipper, and once your thumb's there, it comes out decently okay. But it's, again, not the easiest thing in the world. But I assume that the leather will work in over time because it's leather, and I'd rather have it too tight now and have it work in later rather than have it perfect now and a month from now it's loose.
Yeah, and I agree. I hope it does work in, and I'm hoping on some long-term reviews of people that do buy them, they can say whether it actually comes like smoother over time, right?
That's it. Which brings me on to ergonomic preference, which I gave an 8 because with this knife, it's the perfect size for my hand, and I can get all 4 fingers on it. And even with the flipper placement, and not giving you enough room in front of the flipper to put a finger there safely, but also whatever, I can still get a full grip on the knife, which is nice. And then I gave it an enthusiasm. Jesus, that wasn't even a word. Enthusiasm of 7, which is right up my alley for what Mr. Fisk was saying earlier.
Well, okay, so here's the question, because the other one you gave an enthusiasm of 6.
Yep.
So this
6 or 5.
This is 1 point higher than the tool in your mind?
1 or 2.
Okay. Or 2.
I can't remember if I gave the enthusiasm a 6 or a 5. It might have been a 5.
Fair enough.
I can look that up if we're really curious about that. I've got his score right here. He gave it a 6. So it's
1 point.
Yeah.
It's at this price point, it's something that, like, if you like Jared Oeser's knives, it's kind of a cool thing. There's some things about it that I like that I might consider at that price point potentially, although I would probably wait until I had an option at it at a reduced price.
You'd have to Sponto this one because it does have a double grind if you wanted to detanto it. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, you're right. As soon as I saw it again in person, it would look super weird detantoed.
Yeah. It would be like if you took the CRKT deviation and turned it into a drop. Anyway.
And I'm just going to comment about something that Ahsoka sang in chat. Can we just agree that Benchmade did a great disservice to these knives with this thick-ass primary grind? And they definitely could be thinner behind the edge.
They should have put the new Select Edge on them.
Ooh,
that would have been nice.
On a 20 CV, maybe the flipper, but not the tool.
Yeah.
The tool, because of how thick the stock is and how small the grind is, the Select Edge. Oh my God, it's a Scandi grind, is what it is. You've just made that knife a Scandi grind.
I'm here for it.
If it was S90, I would be like, yeah, dig in. Let's select Scandi a tool. That's cool. But that would no longer be a Jared Oeser design. So
that's fair.
I think Joe's left, right?
Yeah,
I'm all that's left. Well, I was a little bit kinder.
I thought we were going to end on a high note. What happened there?
It's still a higher note, I think. Well, hey, it's a higher note than I gave the tool.
Okay.
I gave this thing a 74. Yeah, it's a very whelming knife. It got 7s except for cost and fit and finish and lockup and actuation, each of which got a 9. I was super impressed with the fit and finish, and like everyone else has been saying, that opening mechanism, like how crisp that flipper is. Okay, maybe not Nigel. Nigel hasn't given it quite as high of a score, but honestly, the only other flipper that I like more that I've handled has been the Spyderco Smock, and I fully admit complete bias because this is just a novel mechanism. But when it comes to traditional flippers, the next best flipper that I own is probably going to be one of my ZTs, and honestly, the Tengu Flipper actually has a superbly fine action. It is wonderful to deploy. Where it loses out for me is the ergonomic preference. Kind of skipping over to personal here, but I like the material choice. I like the aesthetics. I like how it feels in pocket. All those are fine. It's the ergonomic preference where it really loses out. And the major reason, the only reason really, is the combination of the flipper tab and the bottom corner of the handle, like this area relative. for once, I have a knife where it's in that weird, awkward Nigel zone where 3 fingers feel great, and then that pinky just grabs that corner in the worst frickin' possible way and just kills any enthusiasm
Jeff.
I had for the knife. What was that?
Tell us more about your 4 fingers there, buddy.
Oh, well, my 4th finger was not happy. How about that? Anyway.
You're doing it wrong.
No, Benchmade did it wrong. Or Jared Oeser, because actually seems to be pretty close to his custom work.
I'm pretty sure Jared Oeser knows what he's doing with that 4th finger.
I think he knows what he's doing.
He wouldn't have come this far without that 4th finger, like having some idea what was going on.
Just throwing up a quick. Well, I'm trying to find a good picture, but you know what? This isn't happening quickly enough, so that's fine. Anyway. Yeah, I mean, overall, I do like it more than the tool. If I were to buy one or the other, it would definitely be the flipper. But it feels so awkward in my hand that it kind of just kills my enthusiasm over it. But otherwise, it scores pretty high, 8s and 9s. Like it's not a bad knife. It's just this is yet another knife where I would recommend getting it in hand because Nigel's got double XL hands. I fit into a large glove. Dennis, I think, fits into a large glove, but he could probably do with an extra large in most cases.
It depends on how fat the glove is.
Yeah. See, I got chunkier palms. You have longer apple picking fingers. So,
yeah, I'm coming for you. Like
As a fun size reference,
yeah,
that's a full size lighter.
It's a little goofy. So for me,
whereabouts on your
weird.
fingers is that? Because like,
Oh, it's lined up at the bottom,
I don't have a pic here.
like flush with my pinky, and
your
just
knuckles?
the metal is above my middle finger.
Okay, I'm just gonna do this on the camera so you can see it compared to this on the camera where you can see the bottom. Like, perfect, there it is. I've got a head just as wide as Nigel. Like it's nuts.
All I've got are Zippos to compare. So
Anyway, yeah, Nigel is got a mitt on him. Anyway,
my main point being this was actually disappointing how uncomfortable it was because otherwise I was initially looking forward to this knife. I thought it looked really cool. I had heard early reports about the action and I was super excited. But it just doesn't feel good in hand. And ultimately, doesn't matter how good it carries. If it doesn't feel good in your hand, it's just not why bother carrying it.
that's funny that you say that because like it's like so neutral of a handle. There's no clip to even bitch about.
I know.
Like, yeah, the flipper does put you back a little bit, but no more so than a mini Griptilian with the front of the finger choil putting you back. Like the handle pushes you severely back, right?
Look at the mini Griptilian though. Like, if we look at the mini Griptilian,
there we go. There's the camera.
Yeah, I was gonna say the mini grip is such a neutral. Well, not so much neutral, but like such a rounded handle that it's gonna feel good in most grips. That rounded nature is it's nice. That would be the reason I'd be interested in it.
What did you score the ergonomic execution on the Nigel on the objective side of things?
For the flipper?
For the flipper. I'm just curious.
Just need to pull it back up here.
Yeah, I know. Me too. That's why I was asking, because I figured you might have it quicker than I do.
Ergonomic execution or ergonomic preference?
You also gave it a 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Nigel also gave it a 7.
Yeah.
You also gave it a 7. I gave it an 8, so a little bit more. But
yeah, honestly, my major hang-up strictly comes from the fact that in my particular hand, it feels wrong. It just feels wrong. But I acknowledge there are people like Paul who hold this thing and they're like, yeah, there's nothing wrong here. Nothing wrong at all.
There's nothing to hurt on this knife. There really isn't, right? Dude. What did you score it, Paul?
For
execution or personal, either one. Yeah.
I gave it an 8 for personal and a 7 for ergonomic.
Okay, so you actually did score it, yeah. Because I think I actually scored it an 8 in both categories. I got to look at mine now.
Honestly, dude, the reason it got a 6.
I did. Yeah.
Look at how harsh that corner is. That's
like compared to the grip pillion.
Yeah. The back
Yeah.
end.
It's
The
just
back end.
it's just in the perfect place to pinch me. That's all it is, and because of that, it's uncomfortable. I was talking with Paul. If he had done this like a coffin-styled handle, somewhat similar to the smock, where each corner was cut off, I would probably already own this knife, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah. Just for the record, I don't know what you scored it, but that Rook monstrosity that you have that hurts as hell, I bet you scored it higher than this. So that's how off you are on your scoring. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I don't know. I just
Mr. Fisk did change our minds forever about it, and I appreciate the fact that he's keeping us in line. I really do, because honestly, we stop forgetting about the other knives we scored. Sometimes, yeah, it's a monstrosity.
Yeah, but look at how that lines up with my fingers. Even this monstrosity has a cutaway that my pinky can rest on very comfortably.
But then the back of the clip is just like, hey, how you doing?
I honestly don't feel it. It's not that big of a problem.
Because you're a monster.
Anyway, yeah.
But the Tengu hurts. That's all I'm saying. But hey, on the objective, I still gave it a 7. It's still a decent passing grade. I still think it did a good job. It's just for me in particular, for whatever reason, the stars have aligned, and they aren't aligned for me. That's all.
But yes, I think the main point is trying to be as consistent as we possibly can. The continuity aspect of our scoring and not letting our personal side of things sway the objective side of things, or vice versa type of thing. And I'm not saying, I'm not calling you out in general. I'm calling the group of us out because I think we're all guilty of it. I really do. And especially if you look at a year ago when we were scoring stuff compared to what we're scoring now. Yes, the scoring's evolved, but I think that in some areas the scoring's become more lenient, and in other areas the scoring's become more harsh as we've evolved. And I don't know good or bad, but it's something for us to consider for sure.
It's one thing that I definitely try to do is if I'm reviewing a knife that is similar to something we reviewed in the past, I will try and go back and see when I scored that and take that into account. And sometimes it's like, okay, I don't know, was I having an off week? Was that thing just particularly bad, or?
I've seen both good and bad. I like when I've gone back and looked at scoring, especially the last couple weeks. I've looked at stuff and been like, wow, where was my head at to give that a 9? Or vice versa, like, oh man, I must have really hated that knife to throw out a 4 or a 5 on that particular score or whatever it may be, right? So
Mr. Fisk is asking for a Top Gear style scoreboard of all the knives.
Like the wall of cool.
We've talked about that.
Yeah.
Actually, the Top Gear style would be a good way to do it. With
Just
the
whichever
overall
one gets the
average
highest
score. Yeah. I mean, Tom Cruise put up a good score no matter how much you hate him personally. His objective, you can't complain about the speed that he ran when he was on Top Gear, right? Like so I think it was Tom Cruise. Anyway,
Probably. You know he does his own stunts, right?
He tried to kill himself on the side of a plane. Anyway, we're talking about a knife.
So, I mean, we got a little bit of extra time here. Do we want to discuss the pair as a set?
What, that they picked the wrong blade shape for them? They should have went with his Warncliffe ones.
Okay,
he's got a Warncliffe flipper and he's got a Warncliffe multi-tool, and that would have sold way better than the standard bullshit.
Can I be honest about the cutting performance here? Because I gave
have you been lying?
I gave it
prior to this.
No. I mean, I gave it a 7, but to be honest, that's an average between the truly abysmal front edge and the really decent back edge, because it's pretty thin in the area between the butterfly logo and where the secondary grind begins. And that forward-facing Tonto edge is just fat as all hell behind the edge, and it's just crappy. In the idea that this is going to be a general EDC sort of tool of opportunity cutter, sure, I think it's kind of a crappy grind, But if you think of it as this forward-facing front edge is going to be great for splitting stuff or really rough tasks, things that are going to be kind of abusive, maybe I should be a little bit more lenient. So that's why it ended up with a 7. But personally, I really hate how thick that edge is. Not that I'm necessarily on the same wavelength that Shabazz is, that everything needs to be super slicey thin all the time, 100% forever. It's just weird that within the same knife, you have such a difference between thickness behind the edge, like in that forward-facing area, and the thickness behind the edge and the back edge. It's strange. It's a really weird juxtaposition to have in the same knife.
Can I mention something aesthetically that I didn't in my own score, and I wanted to bring it up? I actually did bring a picture of it specifically.
Oh, sure.
But the weird gap, I think it's the picture where I'm holding the knife,
Okay,
and the weird gap when it's closed.
Yeah, let me bring that up.
There's a really, really big cutout that almost seems like it's unnecessary when the knife is closed. Like the liner and the stop pin don't need to be that far back, but they are. Yeah, that huge gappy space right in the back of the knife.
I've
got this
theories.
is upside down, so it's, yeah.
I've got theories. So this isn't the picture for it, but there are 2 stop pins there. There's a stop pin that engages when this thing is in the open position and one when it's in the closed. It's actually really similar to how this ZT Emerson design works, where there's... Oh, wow, that's not showing up on camera at all. Anyway, there's 2 stop pins, and they engage separately. So rather than choosing a diameter stop pin that's in between the 2 and sticking it in between those 2 posts, they have 2 different posts. I don't necessarily know why that is. Maybe it had to do with the geometry for the liner lock itself, and that could explain the weird spacing. It isn't to make or break point of the knife for me personally either.
That's actually what balanced my aesthetic score out on the personal side of things. Is like I really, really like the cookies and cream aspect, but I really didn't like the way that the whole knife was perfectly seamless, except for that one little gappy thing that looked like it stood out. So that's where my aesthetic actually balanced out on the score, right? The Tanto blade being weird.
Yeah.
So
I do wish that they had done an internal stop pin, but it's not something that Benchmade usually does anyway, so I don't...
And they did a weird octagonal stop pin. I know that's probably the only picture I have of it, but yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not the first time they've done it, but...
Yeah.
I don't know what other knives they actually have in an octagonal stop. Oh, the Cebu. I'm almost sure the Cebu had a octagonal stop pin, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
The Torrent also has an octagonal stop pin. I knew I owned one that did.
Hey, that knife is relevant all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Finally.
That's a little bright, but yeah, you can kind of see it. It's not often that you see that octagonal stop pin turn up in Benchmade knives, but it does exist and it does show from time to time. Yeah.
Indeed.
Does that round us out for part 2?
I just have one question. Does it feel like anybody else that these 2 things were designed, obviously they were designed to be sold as a set?
Oh, sorry guys.
Did they just sell them individually because they figured they'd sell more flippers, or?
Probably, but I'll be right back. Sorry guys. 2 minutes.
2 minutes? It's break time in 2 minutes.
I guess we're not going for a break now then.
Apparently.
Well, as long as the rest of us are still up. Sold in a pair, yes and no. But I think they were just like, yeah, I think that's why they did the same blade shape, for sure.
No, what I'm saying is, though, is that if you take the 2 together and say $450, does that feel like a better price than the tool at $250?
No.
No. Okay, if they had done them in a combo pair at $450 for the 2 of them and done steak knife gift box blah 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 set for a pair of them, yeah, it would probably score higher just because we're compensating for whatever, liking the flipper more than we're liking the tool, or vice versa, depending on whose score you're asking, right? But Yeah, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. I think they did the blade shape intentionally because of that.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's for the gram for sure. If you look at how nice they look paired up in the pictures that you guys were taking.
Yeah, they're pretty photogenic too. Just in time for us to go back to break.
There we go.
Good timing,
Yay.
Good timing.
Yeah. Hey, you know, a choking dog kind of takes priority.
Fair enough.
Is he still alive? Like
she and yes.
Then job well done.
Stressful giving a dog
Mr.
a
Fisk is
Heimlich.
saying in chat, the pair at 450 would be equal to an Anthem. Would it be equal to an Anthem? I don't know if I would say that.
I'd rather have the Anthem.
Depends on how you market it. The Anthem doesn't have Jared Oeser's name behind it, which is what they're capitalizing on. No, it doesn't need it, but they're capitalizing on that to sell their knives because his customs are so popular, and especially on social media, he's doing well for himself, right? So,
well, that's it. If you like Jared Oeser's designs, this is a great way to get a chance to
not pay $700 for one. Yeah, so
hey, you said
$700 and sold out across the board. Like, let's be honest. It's more than just they're expensive, which custom is.
Good for him,
but they're also hard to come by.
Well, that's the thing, and if you look at his custom stuff, there's a huge variety in materials, even just on this one screenshot alone. I mean, the guy has a couple patterns he likes, and he's using different handle materials, presumably different blade steels as well. It's cool, and I can understand the appeal for sure.
I'm curious about the blade steels he uses in the customs, but that's just the nerdiness in me. We don't have to look it up. It's
yeah. But on that note, break time.
Certainly. So yeah, it is that once again government mandated break time. So make sure you fill your bladders or empty your bladders and refill your drinks in whatever appropriate order, and we shall be back shortly with everyone.
It's a cycle, man. It's a cycle. It's a cycle.
Don't fill one with the other.
Oh. I could have lived without hearing that from you, Paul.